Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I got sidetracked. I was trying to fix something in YouTube. I was trying to turn off the leaderboard and then I looked up and realized that I was late. So, hi. Thanks for thanks for hanging out. Thanks for waiting with me for a minute. You know what that also means? It means I don't have my show notes up. Um, so I'm working on it. How's everybody doing? How let me know where you're coming in from, what you're sipping on this evening. I have myself my Stay Salty Maine, and it's a gin and tonic because it's gin and tonic season. You know what else I have? We're gonna need this tonight. I got my goat. I got my goat. So, all right, my show notes are up. I have my goat. Put the goat in front of your face, Aurora. That way you'll remember to use that you can use that to scream at things. Um and I'm that's gonna cause me a headache. All right, so I give up. I give up with trying to figure something out. Um yep. It's this Mercury retrograde, man. Wow. Wow, this Mercury in retrograde. So anyway, while we're chatting, while we're getting started, tonight is going to be a big show. It's going to be probably a long one, so get yourself comfortable. I have a lot to say, and hopefully there will be a lot of folks in the chat tonight. Who knows? We will see. Anyway, before we get rolling, do all the YouTubey things, do the like and subscribe and all that, because you know what? I usually forget to tell you to do that when I'm supposed to in the stream. So yeah, do that. Um, pardon me. Also, I want to remind you that we lead with kindness here. So before we get rolling, I'm not an expert in anything we end up talking about. However, um, I'm a nerd. And so I aim for thoughtful discussion. Facts are friends. We lead with kindness. Um, and that's the thing. So even though I don't like to live in an echo chamber, I also won't engage with things that are bad faith and just being nasty to be nasty. Sometimes I'll take them down, but that's really if there's, Michael Proctor level kind of speech in there, and otherwise, because that just nobody needs to see that. But if it's just aimed at me, I'm probably going to leave it up. I'm just not going to engage. Same in the chat. So anyway, be kind and respectful, and then we can have a real conversation, and that's going to be super super important tonight because tonight we're going to dive into some things and we're going to have a conversation that the media is not having, and I have a platform, so I'm going to have that conversation. Also, I can't believe this needs to be said in this day and age, but anyway, we don't dox, we don't harass, we don't go in real life to places, we don't do any of that. So I'm not going to encourage that, and I'm going to tell you not to do it too because nobody needs that kind of headache in their life. Um, anyway, I'm glad to have you here. I want to welcome everybody. If you are brand new, hi, I'm Aurora. The intro will tell you a little bit about me, but basically, I'm a legal biller during the day, and I am definitely a politics nerd and a court watching nerd. Um, and so I would love at some point, maybe when this is week, I don't know, November at some point. Anyway, I would love to get back to talking about the pop culture and court part of it because there is so much popping off in court these days. We have so much to get caught up on. But considering that the national media has stepped in it as far as Maine is concerned, I figured since I'm a Mainer and have and have a voice and a platform, I would use it to have this discussion because I'm honestly not seeing these sorts of discussions happen. So, with that, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. And I'm going to buckle up. Aurora, don't read both of your notes at the same time. It will only confuse your brain. Okay. Buckle up, get comfy, get your drink, get your snacks. We have a big one in front of us. There's a lot of things that we have to cover, and I'm going to take my time to cover them. Um, and I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and roll the intro. I'll see you in a minute. Welcome to Bark a Lot with the Aurora H. White. I'm a legal biller by trade, opinionated law and politics nerd by default. I'm here to break down the political, pop culture, and court headlines that we're all talking about. We value facts, thoughtful discussion, and salty language, so whether you're a fellow law nerd, a political junkie, or just looking for a little hope in today's crazy world, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button, pull up your soapbox, and let's go. Let's go. Let me also try to. That is not what I need. Hi guys, sorry. I have something up in front of me and I was trying to make it. I have my show notes in front of me. I was trying to make it smaller and then all of a sudden it took over all the screens. So, technology, you know. So Mainers, welcome. Welcome Mainers. If you're from away, sit down, join us, listen, ask questions, lead with curiosity. Facts are friends. And yeah, so for those of us in Maine, it's been one hell of a week, hasn't it? With this Graham Plattner situation and all of that. And not just that, like, I don't know about you. I've seen this happen a lot. I had to mute a ton of big creators. I found the mute button on Threads, by the way, because I had to mute a ton of big name creators because and news places and things like that because they just I can't stand it. I can't stand how they act about Maine. I can't stand how they talk about Maine. And when people come to them in the comments and are like, "Hey, respectively, that's not how Maine works. Like we're deeply independent and purple state. And so in order to win the Senate race, it's not to win any race, it's not about are you a Democrat or Republican? It's not even are you progressive or conservative because so many things in this state overlap. And so it is about finding the right person who can connect with folks because there are a ton of folks that I know that are probably voted for Trump, but have my back. Have my back a lot more than some folks that voted Democrat for the last 30 years, but, are behind a gate in Falmouth. So it's a dichotomy. It's one of the things we're wrestling with. So if you are a Mainer and you have hit mute and hit block, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. If they can't hear a huge portion of their audience respectfully letting them know that they don't know what they're talking about, hit mute, make them disappear. And it made me sad to do that with some, but also everybody, myself included, like we aren't right all the time. So they've had to take a minute. I do have to say, like, even the Daily Show, I saw a clip and I was like, nope, I'm out. I'm out. They took the easy joke and it's the Daily Show, so it bothers me a little bit less, but also, I do want to say though, I am gonna say this. The Phil DeFranco show is literally the only bit of news I have seen in all of the reporting throughout all of the scandals that has not I've been able to watch it and not wanted to yeet my iPad into the sun. So, I have linked his channel in the description of this video. I recommend you go check it out, especially if you would like to get some news, but you're afraid to turn on the news because you're in Maine, and that's a dicey situation right now. So Phil DeFranco is definitely the one non-Mainer that I have come across who has done that in a way that does not make me viscerally angry. So Philip DeFranco and team, on behalf of Mainers who are tired, thank you. Thank you for not making me regret getting my tickets to go see the live show and all of that. Like, I thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for handling that in a way that all of the national media should be handling it, in my own personal opinion. Um, so and with that, I'm going to say that, also, chat, I'm getting a flash on my end, and I don't know if that's, like, coming across on your end or if it's just StreamYard, so if you happen to see if the visuals are funky, let me know, because I may just need to reboot the stream. Um, but anyway, before we get diving into that, I also do want to, for my fellow Mainers, this came from somebody on Threads who is from New Hampshire, but I had to share it with you anyway because we're about to dive into this. So for those of us who have been through this insane week, um, I could not have put this better myself, and I can't take credit for it. But the quote is, "Trying to explain Maine to non-Mainers is like trying to explain physics to a toddler. It's amusing, depressing, and frustrating." So, if you're joining us from away, then, it's this is what the last week for Mainers has been like. Also, I will say I did also link a blog post that I wrote a few weeks back explaining how purple Maine is. It's not, you know, a Harvard paper, but it is useful in, I think it's useful in explaining that we're independent, we're very purple. And some of our purple trends blue and some of the purple trends red, but for the most part, the main voting electorate is purple. And it would seem that that doesn't translate outside of the state. I would think it would, but apparently it doesn't. So, I think that covers all of the beginning stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and swoop, and then we are gonna start with the uncomfortable truths, because part of what I wanna deal with tonight is a lot of the conversation that we have to have isn't comfortable. Doesn't fit into a headline, it doesn't fit into clickbait. It's not comfortable, but it's important. So, I'm gonna swoop, and then we'll dive into it. All right, let us start with the hardest one here. Everything. So, okay. First, no, let me start with road so far. So, for those of you who have been uh, on vacation, taking a very, very long nap, don't live in America, or are just managed to have cultivated your algorithms so that you are blissfully unaware. Um, the Maine Senate race has been a shit show for a while now. And then when the primary was held, Graham Plattner won with a remarkable amount of the vote. 70 something percent. And then that was after the tattoo, by the way, which is a skull and crossbones, probably a Totenkopf, and I say probably because I have seen it, but also I never saw it in person, and there are variations there. So somebody said it online and then it took off like wildfire. I would like to remind everybody of that, and it's why I don't say I have found that about half the people who comment on the tattoo have no idea what the tattoo was. They make inferences and assumptions. And so this is the tattoo thing. So he had a problematic tattoo, a couple of problematic Reddit posts, although if you zoomed out on the rest of the Reddit posts, you could see that it was little context. Anyway, that also doesn't fit into a clickbaity, salacious headline. So that. Um, and I can't remember her first name, Miss Fifield came forward with some allegations that her story has now changed, and here's the honest truth as far as I'm concerned. We know that she has lied about things in the past to further her own personal political goals, not necessarily something like this. It just it makes it hard. So she came forward with some allegations which have gotten more extensive since the allegations from Jennifer Rassicot. It's messy. So Graham Plattner wins, the state rallies behind him, everything is good. Well, we think we're like in the clear for a minute. And then nope, I can't remember the name of the publication. Politico drops a story that says this woman, Jennifer Rassicot, has made allegations against Plattner over him coming over to her house and coming inside even though she told him to leave and then not leaving and then assaulting her. He claimed that he was blackout drunk and he did this while blackout drunk. And then she told him she never wanted to talk to him again. And they seemingly, if I'm remembering this story correctly, haven't spoken the whole time, since. He claims this is false. Okay. This is where I'm gonna have the internet on all sides real fucking mad at me. Also, I swear on here, so if you have delicate ears, sorry, I didn't warn you before I swore. I apologize. That's my bad. But we will use the cursey words. Anyway, so that's a basic road so far. Once that second allegation came out, the internet went insane. The mainstream media lost their goddamn minds, and Mainers went, ugh. Okay. So Graham Plattner has now dropped out of the race. So now we are in a situation where the Democrats get to pick the person that they probably wanted in the first place. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. We've never done this before in Maine. So anyway, that's the basic road so far, and I'm getting ahead of myself. So with the allegations and where the internet went insane here is the hardest thing to wrap your head around as a person. It doesn't work for the media. It's real hard. It's okay if you believe everybody. It's okay if you believe everybody. This is a situation where everybody could be telling the truth. And when it comes to Rassicot versus Plattner, I think we do need to set an example, but I'm also somebody very much who is a trust but verify kind of girly. I um also where this gets really complicated with everybody, assume everything that everybody has said in this situation, Rathicott and Plattner, at face value, assuming they are both telling the truth as they see it through their lens. Does that make Graham Plattner a predator and a bad person who is so stupid that how can he not see it? No. By her own account, he was blackout drunk. That's not an excuse. PTSD is not an excuse. I'm not saying those are excuses because they're not. But what I am saying is it doesn't always make it clean. And human nature, very much, especially these days, we want a villain and we want a hero. We want in a situation like this, the news media needs Rathicott to be a hero and Plattner to be a villain. And the reality is that it is very possible that it's much more murky than that. And I know we don't love that, but also I'm going to direct you to Amber Heard in 2016. And she came out with some things, and what did we find out a few years later? Those of us who watched the trial, there's still a group online that clearly did not watch the trial or care about the evidence. They will always exist, it's fine. But the evidence showed that she was the aggressor in this situation. So we also have to wrestle with the fact that it's not always men. It is mostly men, but also I think when you're looking at numbers of men versus women, the numbers for women reporting these sorts of things is lower than it should be. The men reporting, particularly when the aggressor is female, I'm not saying this is the situation. That is not at all what I'm saying, but I am saying we have to take that into account, that women are aggressors too. And we have no idea what the numbers actually look like because, as a rule, we do not believe men when they come forward. We have a hard enough time believing women when they come forward, basically victims across the board. We don't want to believe that. And why don't we want to believe that? Because there is a certain amount of cognitive dissonance that happens, particularly when it's people that we know or people that we admire. Um, it I've been through this with other folks as well. I've had my personal experiences with stuff. I've had my personal experiences where I'm the victim and I'm trying to like navigate the fact that the person who did the thing to me isn't a villain. They're really a good person, but they did an awful thing to me. It is a big thing to wrestle with. And not only that, but it's not a conversation that the national media wants to have. Why? Because it's not good clickbait. It's not a salacious headline. You can't clip the difficult conversation. You can't clip the fact that all of the things can be true at once. The PTSD can be real. The numbing of alcohol can be real. The pain from seeing the combat can be real and probably is. That's that war is a whole different ball game. He could do awful things, she could be the victim, but she also isn't necessarily there is no perfect victim, but there is also the possibility that we don't know yet that she was convinced to tell her story at a particular point in time. And there is the possibility as well, we've all felt it from somebody where, again, taking everything at face value, there's the very real possibility that she's just mad. And sure, I'll take him down now. I'm not, that doesn't fit with what her story, what that interview was, but I do have questions based on who the initial interviewers were. I have questions about the whole thing. And to simply say, Graham bad, Jenny good, end of story, and be done, first of all, it doesn't solve the problem. Second of all, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the victim. It doesn't help the perpetrator. And it doesn't help us get to answering the question of why does this happen? Until as long as we are in this person's bad, this person's good, end of story, and then just walking away, we can't move forward from that. And if we want to start solving the problem of assaults, if we want to get on the same page with our friends and neighbors, no matter their gender or all of that, about what constitutes assault, what does it mean, where is the line between mistake and predator, because not every instance of this equals predator. That is the other thing, is not every instance of this means that the perpetrator is a predator. Sometimes, yeah, Brock Turner would be a perfect example. That was the first time, and that was so fucked up that I guarantee you that if given half a shot, he is going to do that again, because that is a level of depravity I cannot even put into my brain. Blackout drunk with some unanswered questions, it leaves room for me to ask questions, for me to get more answers. It is possible that, yeah, he's a terrible person, but there have been so many other actions that go against that, that I think we need to hit pause before we just vilify and go, "Good, life ruined, and it was his fault," and go away. Anybody know how Swalwell's doing? Because I'm pretty sure his life wasn't completely ruined. His career ended. For sure. For sure, for sure. But you notice you haven't heard anything about him. I have questions as to why. So, that's really something that we have to start talking about, is the need for mental health, first of all, just across the board. Um, and that things sometimes there are complicated situations. And sometimes I've seen this happen where something happens, right? Something happens between two people. For one person, it is assault, and for the other person, they misread the cues. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I am saying this is a thing we need to take in when we're having this conversation. And I have seen it happen. And when faced with that sort of thing, it's like, "Oh my god, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you." But also, when everybody misreads the cues and the victim has the thing, it's messy, right? There is no clean answer there. There's no good, bad, indifferent. Also, we do have to recognize that coming from a place of belief, um, doesn't mean we don't ask questions. It means we don't sit here and go, "So what were you wearing?" But it does mean that we can go, I wanna connect these 2 dots. This dot doesn't match up with this dot for me, so can you draw the connection between the 2? That not a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem because, again, this sort of thing is complicated and messy. Um, and we can believe survivors, and we don't always have to demonize the perpetrator because it can be messy. We have to, and I'm like, I don't know enough of the details here. I know her version, and I know he says it's categorically untrue. And there are a lot of folks out there who are like, "Oh, so we can't even take accountability?" Would you take accountability if you're sitting here going, "I am absolutely certain that never happened?" And maybe it did, but it's not in his memory. That is possible. That is very, very possible. And so we have to take that into account. Is that is in fact possible? Is it clean? No. And it doesn't leave us feeling good at the end of the day because we like to feel a little bit better than the bad guy, right? And so if he's a villain, we can feel a certain kind of way, right? We can feel like we are victims too, and thank goodness she came forward and all that. We can have that sort of a camaraderie. But I do wonder what happens. I'm gonna go back to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard example because he lost his career and got shunned, and everybody just assumed Amber Heard was telling the truth because there are so few false allegations, you have to start from a place of belief. And her career started to take off and all of that, and things were going, and his sort of ended, and people got very nasty towards him and everything. And a few years after all of that started, it comes out drip, 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 slowly, slowly, slowly through a defamation court case that it turns out that all the vitriol that had been directed at him was just adding to what he was experiencing when he tried to leave her. So we also have to keep in mind that those situations exist. It doesn't necessarily relate to the Graham and Jenny situation, but it is something that I keep in my head when my instinct is bad man, good woman. Thank you. That is a little too simple. I can believe everybody. The problem is that when I believe everybody, and in this case I do, I there's no clear path forward, right? And that's why I'm having that conversation tonight because we have to sit in the gray for a while before we can start having the conversations that we don't want to have about alcoholism, PTSD, assault, and and I'm I think I was gonna go with the R word on that one, but it YouTube, and I'm not gonna say it here. So, and We also have to consider who gains what when and who loses what when. What are the personalities in play and stuff like that? Do I have the answers? No, I don't. But I do know that from what I've seen, this is part of what a lot of Mainers are struggling with right now is believing everybody. And we don't know what to do with that because there's no villain and hero. It doesn't fall into that simple split. I don't know what we do with that, but we might want to start thinking about it. Um, I'm going to swoop and then we're going to get a little bit into the politics behind all of this because, yes. So that brings me to my next hard truth. Because this is a political story, we have to understand that the establishment, Democrats and Republicans, the ones who put the oligarchy in place, often work together. And they work together to keep out folks that they consider a threat. And in this case, Graham Plattner was a threat, a big time threat to the backroom establishment, DC politics. He knew what it was. He talked about it and he had no patience for it. And I'd like to remind you that the very same people who threw everything they had at ending Plattner's campaign are, by and large, the exact same group of backroom kingmakers that protected Swalwell. They allowed Swalwell to continue as a predator, knowing the level of predation that he was inclined towards, it would seem. But they let him do it. They let him continue. And why did they let him continue? Because Swalwell, at the end of the day, was useful to them and he'd play ball. And they had this big thing that they could hang over his head if he stepped out of line. So they knew he was never going to step out of line. With Plattner, it is worth noting that they felt the need to find that thing before he could even get to DC. That is how much of a threat the movement and Graham Plattner leading it is to the establishment. So there's that. And before I can almost feel it. I can feel the screaming about, but backroom deals don't happen, blah, 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 blah. At the very beginning of the campaign, Graham Plattner did say that the party insiders, i.e. the Democrats, okay, and I'm sure they cross aisles and stuff like that, depending on the need. But in this particular case, the Democrats told him that if he ran for Senate in Maine, they were going to destroy his life. So we have to take that into. And do I believe that as well? I do. I do believe that because I have seen several folks who have toyed with the idea of running for office out of turn. And they've all said the same thing. That the folks, the insiders that they talk to, all told them not to run. If you run, we will destroy you. Like every single story that I've heard um of people talking about that sort of thing on interviews and podcasts and stuff like that, because there, mind you, there hasn't been a ton, but there has been enough. And every single one of them, when you hear it, you are like, wait, that's the national party, not a mob boss? Because it sounds very mob bossy. We will destroy your business. We will destroy your life. And then what you start to see is when folks say, thanks, no thanks, I'm going to do this anyway. Things have kicked up a notch, and you're seeing the Plattner situation, which is something we are all wrestling with. Because when you have that bit of knowledge along with all of the other knowledge, right, it starts to, if everything is on a scale, it's not clearly one or the other, right? It's balancing. So, and Plattner was clearly a threat, in part, almost be, especially because he was a white dude. So he's white, he's straight, he's male, he's pro gun, he understands the Beltway, and he's not afraid of anybody down in DC. That's not what the oligarchs want. And by the way, all of that vetting is mostly, what can we use? What do we need to bury so that the other side doesn't find it? That's one thing. The other side is, what can we use to make sure you stay in line? And that politics. Okay, that is politics. The other reason Graham Plattner was a threat and why they starting to tear his life apart, which I think they've done I success, success, um, is, how to put this? Um, he told everybody about the room where it happens. Q Alexander Hamilton, which I've been listening to a lot today. Um, he told people about the back room, the room where he told everybody how the sausage was made, and was going to tell everybody what chess pieces got traded. And that threatens a way of existence for the Beltway bros that they were not prepared to handle. They didn't have a backup plan for that. So they don't want some upstart coming through and exposing all of their backroom deals, or even getting in the back room and then going on a podcast and telling people what the back room was. They want to control that narrative. And before anybody online comes at me and says, well, this kind of leads into the next thing, right? Which is, oh, but out of state people came and plucked him from obscurity and trained him and made him the plant that he was. I hate to break it to you. Although I shouldn't be breaking anything to you because it's very clearly history. Again, see Hamilton. Kingmakers have existed since the dawn of the country for 250 years. For the most part, nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to run for office. No, most of the people that actually get to office get a knock on their door from some of these kingmakers, and they say, you should run for this office. We'll cover this, and this, and then the rest is up to you. Which is, shocker, exactly what happened with Plattner. And if you want to pretend that it isn't happening, which this is part of what we're seeing right now is the mainstream media, the national media, they are all trying desperately to take back the narrative, to shove that kingmaker part of it under a carpet somewhere or into a closet and tell everybody, "No, no, no, what you thought you saw, you didn't see. Pay no attention to this. No, it's nothing. This doesn't really exist. You've made it up." He just made it all up. No, he didn't. Kingmakers have happened. Again, Hamilton. If you go listen to Hamilton, how did we end up with George Washington? He didn't walk in and go, "I'll be president." No, a group of people said, "You, sir, will be our first president." And he went, "Okay." And then somebody told Jefferson he was going to be Secretary of State. And he went, "Okay." And then he was like, "You know what? I think I want to run for president." And George Washington was like, "You know what? I'm going to step aside and then you can run." It's but going on through, and if I'm remembering my biography of Eliza Hamilton properly, it's been a couple years since I listened to it, but she was one of the nation's first kingmakers. The Before the Beltway was the Beltway, Washington insiders would bring folks over for dinner parties, and she would tell them which offices she thought folks would be good for or not, or if she thought they shouldn't be there. I think Martha Washington also joined her in this a lot. So, this, as much as we want to pretend that anybody running for office, it's this organic choice and they're doing it for the good of the people. And no, uh. The only people who are like, "It is time, I'm going to run for senator," are people who've trained to be a politician since they were in high school. And they've built the contacts with the notion that one day they would run. So it's the same but different. So if you'd like to choose to believe that this is a magical one-off, I direct you to reread Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, and review lots of other interviews with other politicians because this is how it happens. Somebody knocks on your door and says, "We think you should run for Senate." And that person goes, "Why?" Usually. And they explain why. And they go, either, "Okay," or "Get out of my face." But we have to accept that that is a thing that happens. Okay? And that as I realize it is uncomfortable. Again, it's more magical to think that he just did this and then lied to everybody and then bounced. But that's not what happened. And I honestly do think that him calling it out pissed off a lot of people. And so they felt the need to put a stop to it. So, where does that lead us to from there? The media. The media is much more interested in giving a salacious story that is super clickbaity and super fucking shallow, if I'm being honest, with only this much of the facts at hand. That's a lot easier for the media. They don't want to ask a lot of deep questions. They'd like to ask somebody like Plattner 47 Ways from Sunday, why the allegation, why now? It's like a bad police interview, just looking for somebody to mess up. Um, and the flip side of that is also not asking Fiffield or Rassicot deeper questions either. Again, certain things are off limits. I would half the stuff Jake Tapper was asking her made me think violent thoughts in my head. Because that's not helpful either. But there is a way to ask the questions that get us more information, and that's what we need is more information, but the media doesn't have a vested interest in getting us more information. And here's what's wild about Maine. We clocked this months ago. We were like, "Oh, the media is just going to come for us." Like, the media has no love for us. And they're just gonna give the little soundbite that they like, that they think is gonna get the most clicks, which is usually enraging because that's what everybody thinks gets the most clicks. Um, and so we clocked it. So we've all been very wary of national sources. And again, I learned several years ago to check on the reporters because there are some that I see cited, and I'm like, yeah, they don't have a great track record of actually researching facts in this particular area. Other areas, yes. This area, no. So there's that. Um, and here's the wild thing, because we are Maine and we did clock it early. You know what we're not doing? We're not going back to the big media. No, no. We are blocking and muting across the board because we don't want to deal with that gaslighting anymore, and we're kind of tired of it. And now that we've clocked it, we're like, "No, boo, we're out. We're gonna go touch grass. We're gonna go talk with each other." That is what we are gonna do. Um, and the media doesn't like that. So you're going to see them ramp up again. Maine, gird your loins. Then we move on to the next thing. So I'm going to swoop and we're going to move on to the next bit. Sorry, I also have, it's pollen season. Okay. So here's the next part. I told you we were going to get uncomfortable today, and so far I can feel the internet. I can feel the internet on all sides being like, "You have it wrong." Um I I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what Mainers think about this. But here's the other part. Here's the other problem the media is running into. Is this wasn't about one particular person. It was about a movement. And the movement was based in community. And what kind of seemed to happen as all the when I went to a very, very, very early Graham Plattner town hall, it was it had a community event focus to it. And I've heard from a lot of other folks that there were usually education and food drives and things like that happening in conjunction with these town halls. And they were, in fact, town halls, and he had over 80 of them. And with that, so this is where, for me, I have a hard time going, oh, he was just a con man, because over 80 town halls where you don't get to pick the questions that are presented to you, that's either very, very impressive as a con artist, possible, not likely. Um, so you get to see a bit of realness there. And the media is not covering that. They weren't rallies, they were town halls, they were meetings. I talked to a lot of folks. We had conversations, we talked to each other at the one town hall I went to, which was, again, the most rally of them that I saw based on what people had talked about. Sorry about that. Sorry, baby. I'm gonna move the here. Sorry. Kitty. The kitty is trying to get comfortable right next here, and so we have to organize laying down under the mic. Under the mic cable. She was going to lay on it, and that wouldn't work well. So, anyway, these town halls and stuff, yeah, questions got written down and they got screened, I think, but not like it wasn't staged. And it certainly didn't come across that way to me. And then here's the part you can't stage: me talking to my seat neighbors and them talking to their seat neighbors, and then us going home and talking to our friends and neighbors. Those are things you can't stage. That's where the organics takes place. So, for the national creators saying these are all astroturf events and aren't real, okay, apparently I'm now astroturf, which just does a disservice to all the groups that actually are, but whatever. You are now muted. It's fine. Um, but it certainly was like the movement. It wasn't about the person, it was about the movement and the way they set up the campaign rallies, the town halls, all of that. Very much from everything I've heard, maybe it's just my little corner of the internet, but from everything I've heard, it was community first, campaign second. And, um, yeah, this, and in contrast, Collins doesn't even attempt to talk to us, even in a way where you can't ask questions. No, Collins has spent so long basically flying into the state the last weekend of an election going, "Hey, don't forget I'm from the county," flying out and getting reelected, which is another thing that we ought to talk about because if I have one more out of stater, I'm gonna squirrel. I'm gonna squirrel. I'm gonna squirrel. I'm gonna squirrel swoop. If I have one more out of stater mention Sarah Gideon's name again, or for that matter, Stephen King or Heather Cox Richardson, like, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. First of all, Sarah Gideon didn't live in the state for a while, like, came up from Rhode Island, had I don't know how many town halls, not many. Um, It took me until this year that I even remembered her name. That was how memorable she was as a Democrat in the race, and she didn't really seem approachable to anybody, and, um, my memory of that, it's probably, oh, very oversimplified, but my memory of that election was Susan Collins quite literally flew into her hometown for about 3 hours, said, "Just a reminder, I'm from the county," and went back to DC, and that's what clinched her reelection the last time. Because people didn't want her, but Sarah Gideon was so milquetoast and so boring. And so whatever DC wants, I'll do. And Mainers are like, ew, no, no, at least she's got power and we know her. Like, we know our problems with Susan Collins. Like, that's the bar. We know our problems with Susan Collins that hit a point where you have to overcome that bar by so much for us to gamble on you. That's what makes it difficult to unseat her. We know our issues with her, but she's our problem, right? Like, she's a problem for the full United States, but we feel like, yeah, we put her there, so we got to deal with it, right? That is part of what we're looking at with that. So when we are looking at who is going to go against Susan Collins in this race, Sarah Gideon's not the way to go. She's just not the way to go. So stop bringing her up as a viable candidate because she's already proven she's not. Squirrel. So going back to the community approach that the campaign took. So it was a community first, a community forward thing. And I am also going to say language is important. And I didn't realize it until late last night, but most of the Plattner campaign staff language was we and us. We, us, and they, right? Like they being the big bad guys in DC, we Maine, we the campaign, we the movement, all of that. There was very little I'm the guy for you. I can do this. I can do that. I'm the only one. There was some of that. It was mostly I'm the only one that has managed to get this many votes, which is stating a fact. So I'll give it a little grace there. Which is a far cry from as soon as he stepped aside. I within the first 24 hours, I had at least 3 text messages from the National Democratic Party, um, and 2 of the now potential candidates instantly that were, "Send me, send me, send me." Now, I know you need to raise money, I know you need to prove that you need to raise money, but that was I hadn't even processed the allegations, the results, the fact that Plattner had to step down, why, never mind all of the national mockery coming this way, and immediately my phone is blowing up going, "Give us money." And it was all with I me, I me, I me kind of language. I didn't love it, and it might have cost somebody a vote of mine. Here's the other thing. Well, I'll get to the Maine Democratic Party thing in a minute. Um, but that language choice makes a huge, huge difference. And that's part of what the movement was about. And I do feel like it was less person, more movement, but movements need a leader. And he was a good leader for that. And we can continue to wrestle that that can be true. And we could all decide that he should step down at this point because I think all of those things are true. But again, that's kind of, oh, sorry, Kitty. That is what we are looking at here. Swoop. Moving on to Mainer's favorite thing that Mainsplainers try to tell us. They try to tell us how our demographic is instead of realizing that we are purple as fuck and some of us skew red purple and some of us skew blue purple and some of us it kind of depends on the subject that you're talking about. Um but here is a it's something along the lines of I wouldn't quote me on the exact numbers here, but what I read earlier today from a source that I mostly trust is that Maine also holds the very unique position of having about 1/3 of its electorate being registered Democrats, 1/3 of the electorate being registered Republicans, and everybody else being independents. As a general rule in this state, Mainers don't like being put into boxes, and so many of us don't generally care about the D or the R. We care about policies, and we care about who you are as a person. We don't care, we just simply do not care Democrat or Republican, and that is one of the things that has made this situation so thoroughly fucked up and difficult for us to navigate. 1, we've never been in this situation before. 2, um, we have a ton of people that I know of in this state that did things like vote for Bernie and then turn around and vote for Trump. Okay? They they are out there, they exist, and they're common, honestly. Like that, and that's a dichotomy that a lot of these national creators don't seem to understand because they can't wrap their head around that, right? But I voted for Susan Collins back in 2002, and I voted for Susan Collins because while I disagreed with her on a couple things, she was a woman, and for the most part, like, she did right by our state. Maybe not the ways that I thought she should always, but she did right by our state, so I absolutely voted for her. And that is that's a thing that I find a lot of these folks out of state can't really understand because it would seem that in their states it's been such a red versus blue for so long that they don't understand what happens when you have such huge numbers of independents, right? Where we we are independent, and it's going to depend, like, you have to earn my vote, and I've crossed party lines before, not so much since 2016, but I absolutely have crossed party lines before because it depends on who's the right person for the job and what is the job. And that doesn't that seems to be a really that seems to be almost harder for the national media to wrap their head around and understand, as opposed to all the stuff I led with at the beginning of this show, where everything can be true at once and it can not necessarily be villain versus hero, right? Like that kind of thing. We have that here. We also in the state of Maine. So keep that in mind with the 70% because as an independent, I could vote and did in the primary. Now you could only choose which primary, right? So you could choose Republican ballot or you could choose Democrat ballot. But you had to choose only one. You couldn't vote Republican and Democrat ballot. So I chose Democrat ballot, hence where we are now. Um, but it's in that independent group, you also have a ton of people that don't usually vote. They're so exhausted from the two-party system, they generally just stay out of it. In part because they can, they're privileged enough where they can stay out of it, and in part because they never feel like their vote matters, and for the first time, they felt like their vote mattered. And they are a part of this conversation as well. Where they won't be a part of the conversation is when choosing delegates and when choosing the replacement. Um, yes, this also back when Susan Collins was senator, uh, uh, sorry, when it was Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins, we had a pretty solid moderate Republican lady team. Now, They didn't always seem moderate back in the time, but back then they were. Susan Collins has definitely gone farther and farther right since Olympia Snow left. Um, and also Leah coming in with they don't understand our demographics or what it's like having a very high chance of shaking a candidate's hand or the nice versus kind thing. Absolutely. In a lot of places, they don't understand. Most places I've visited, nice and kind are used synonymously. Most people in those other places, Massachusetts doesn't count because Massachusetts and Maine used to be one. But in most other places, n- nice is what you get. People will be polite to your face. People will be nice to you on the surface. They won't say the thing that will offend you, all of that, but if they found your wallet in the street and there was 20 bucks in it, you might not get that 20 bucks back. They might just take their finder's fee even if they return the wallet. We tend to be more kind and not nice here in Maine. We will tell you look like a raggedy piece of shit while also fixing you your favorite dish or asking if you've had your coffee yet today. The rest of the nation doesn't seem to understand how that works. Or also with that, circling back to the folks who voted for Bernie and then turned around and voted for Trump, I know a ton of people that are good people in my world that are Trumpers. Not overt Trumpers. They are the people who voted for Bernie and then voted for Trump. And then they probably voted for Trump 3 times. And why have they voted for Trump? Sometimes it's the racism. Although I will say that even with these folks, this is another dichotomy that is very hard for people outside the state to understand. There are a ton of these folks who are incredibly racist when you listen to their words, but they have neighbors who are not white or something along those lines, and or friends who are not white, and those folks fall into a different category for them, so they don't fall into a monolith, and they will do anything for these friends and neighbors, and I think it was actually early on in all of this where, Shay Stewart Boulay, who writes the Black Girl in Maine Substack, which I have also linked in the description here. I think she talked about something where, like, one of her neighbors, she heard saying some of the most insane racist garbage, but then also shoveled her steps out for her and checked to make sure that she was okay in a cold snap in the winter or something like that. I'm getting the details wrong, but that is the other thing that we deal with all the time here in Maine, right? So that's another thing that doesn't seem to work well for headlines, because how do you explain that somebody can say these racist things, but also then fight tooth and nail for all of their friends and neighbors who maybe fall into the same group that they say the racist things about? And I've been in the room where this has happened multiple times. Like, and for some folks, they literally have no idea that what they just said is a problem. They've absolutely no clue that what they just said is a problem. Should they know? Probably, but it is sort of a wild thing to live through if you're not used to it, and I don't think the out of staters can really grasp what that means. So somebody like Graham Plattner spoke to those folks, and he could engage with them, and they would listen to him, and he would listen to them, and so it could be a conversation, right? So he could ask the questions to get somebody who maybe didn't agree or who was like that to come around and see that maybe their idea was faulty. And it when you have been in a state and in a place or a party where it really feels like for the last 10 years or more, um, that the party that you align most with doesn't listen to you at all and truly doesn't even care about you. They just care about getting your vote and then they're gone. When for the first time in a while somebody appears that does make you feel like you're actually being heard, that's where some of that fire comes from, and the wind has just been knocked out of our sails because of it. Because, well, what was the response when this happened? I I admit, guys, I have not gotten past, like, the first did I force myself to watch the whole Maine Democratic Party video? I might have. I might have forced myself to watch I want every time I have turned it on I think I tried 3 or 4 times before I was able to force myself to get through it, and I'm still not sure I got past the first 10 seconds or 7 seconds even because it was so condescending, and the vibe on that video was so very much just, "Now that you've had your fun, now that you've picked that bad guy that we all knew was a bad guy, now that we've reminded you that he's a bad guy, now that all that is there, and you understand that you have just, like, walked into a wall, now that you're there, um, will you listen to us now? Will you do what we tell you to do now? Because, if you don't, you can go through this again." That was the vibe. That was absolutely the vibe I got from that video. Maybe that is not the vibe that you got from that video, but that is the vibe that I got from that video. Um, it was and that is where I felt everybody online just deflate. The second that video went out and half of the Mainers online were like, now will you listen to us for modern establishment because this progressive thing is too much. We can't do too woke. That's not okay. So now will you just sit down and let the grown-ups in the room handle it? And we all I I'm amongst the group that went, I don't know. I haven't had time to process yet. I don't know. Um Yes, this, and he didn't give people negative attitude that he may have disagreed with that Mills has. Yeah, that was the other thing. If he disagreed, you didn't get all that I just did from the Maine Democratic Party. Oh, that is how damn it sorry, that is a nickname that is in my head and it's stuck. But that's how Janet Mills is when you disagree with her. Like, oh, you're just gonna go have your fun now. I'm surprised she didn't pop out of the woodwork and go, "Oh, you coulda had me." Of course, at this point, given that literally everybody that lost a race in the primary is now running for Senate in this state, I'm sure that she will appear and do that at some point her as well. Um, but, like, it didn't sorry, I'm catching up on my notes here. Um Yeah, and when after they Maine Democratic oh god, that video was awful. And after it dropped, you know what I saw? I saw a ton of Mainers, like a fuck ton of Mainers, suddenly considering whether or not they were going to remain a Democrat. Here's the other fun fact, those independents, the ones that swing the election one way or another, the ones that are equal in number to the Dems and probably have for the most part, progressive values as well. Um, yeah, in order to choose the next candidate for Senate, you have to be a registered Democrat. I'm not registering as a Democrat again. I'm not gonna do it. And if this is how they're gonna treat them, and if the attitude is, well, you had your fun with populism and you had your fun with socialism, but now let's just leave it at the status quo. And then we'll blame you when we don't win. Because that's what's going to happen. Oh, right. I am being reminded. I am being reminded. Yeah, I think at this point, and for the House as well, I think literally any loser from the primaries has now thrown their hat in the ring for US Senate. You thought we had a you thought that there were too many people running for governor. I think only California feels our pain on that level. Cause yeah, everybody who lost has gone, me. Sorry, I scared the cat. Um, and here's the thing for me. I don't feel the fire from anybody right now. I've no preference at this moment in time because none of them have earned my fucking vote. And I don't know if any of them will. I'd like to think that they will, but I don't know if they will. I don't know what community building has been out there, and it's going to depend on can they tap into that movement. But I'm going to be real curious to see the numbers for the Democratic Party and how they shift over the next few months. Because this will have an effect on who's a Maine registered Democrat. And if I'm being completely blunt, I don't think it's going to go in the direction that the Dems think it's going to go in. I think they thought we'll whack Maine across the nose and then they'll come home to us. Well, you picked a weird fucking way to do it. Honestly. And okay, I'm being told that the screen is doing the flashy thing. That's okay. I'm going to swoop. So instead of just swooping, what I'm going to do is we're going to take a breath. Everybody's going to go have a little sip of something. When I come back, we're almost done, folks. When I come back, we are at the point of what do we do now? And I have some thoughts because it could go in one of two ways. But I clearly need to do a reboot. So give me a moment. Let me pull up this. All right. I'll be back in a minute, guys. I'm going to try and do a reboot. I'll be right back. It forgot me. Am I back? I need to take this down. Hang on. I forgot this is separate. There we go. There we go. All right. I am back. Sorry, and my in-ears are getting funky. Okay. Well, that was a nice little interlude. Um, oh, Tech Man. Tech Man. All right. I'm not seeing the flashy thing immediately. Let me know if it bounces back, but that's okay because, all right, guys, what happens now? Oh, good. I am back. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. I am back. We've made it. We've made it through the hard stuff. We've made it through the shitty parts that all of this crap can be true. And we're going to have to sort through it. Before I get into where do we No. Nope. Nope. Aurora, I was reading ahead. I was reading ahead. I forgot. You'd think I would write these and then they would stick in my head, but they don't. What happens for Maine now? Well, people like me get to sit back and watch and hold our breath and wonder if our voice is going to be heard. And if I am being completely honest right now, I'm tired. I'm sad. I'm mad. I want answers to questions that people aren't seeking out. And I am real tired of the status quo that wants to just let the oligarchs keep ruining our lives and are quite happy to let us work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs to make ends meet and would like to just go back to the way things have always been. But I'm going to remind you that the same folks who voted for Bernie and turned around and voted for Trump, who also voted for a ton of other Democrats, by the way, I'm just going to put that out there. They voted for Trump to break shit so that we would have to fix it. And we're at a point now where I can't say that they were wrong. And would we be in a I have to ask myself the question of would we be in a moment where we are really looking at the intricacies of rebuilding our democracy in a way that works for more people if Trump hadn't won in the first term and especially in the second term, because we got real complacent. When Biden stepped into office, there was a palpable sense of relief, and then everybody kind of was like, "Oh, good, I can go about my daily life again." And we all kind of forgot to do the work. And now that we've been reminded of what happens when we don't keep an eye on it, the pendulum is swinging. But the pendulum is missing the people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries who have some strong words every now and then, but ultimately, I've said it before and I will say it again, they don't want to win. They don't want somebody like Graham Plattner to win, and they do not want somebody in Maine to win. It's why they picked Janet Mills, because Janet Mills could do what they wanted, and if she lost, which they expected she would, they'd get Susan back again, who's already with them and doing the backroom deals with them. They wanted somebody who was already there doing the deals or staying out of it, depending on what the situation called for. What they don't want is anybody who's going to pull the curtain back and go, this dude's just an old man punching some buttons. That's what they don't want. So that's why they're so vehement against running anybody that could win with the backing of the people. So, and we're still gonna have to wrestle all of the facts here because I don't think we have all of the facts, and I don't know as any media outlet has the incentive to get them, and I hate that. Which leads me to the Maine Dems are going to choose somebody. Who that is, I don't really know. I don't even know who I want because nobody has the earned my vote yet. I just I don't know. I don't know where we go from here, and I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's gonna be a hot mess, and I'm gonna wager that for the most part, the people signing up to be delegates are a lot of Janet people. Um, I would love to be proven wrong. I don't know what the Democratic numbers are. I would love people like me to have representation, but I personally refuse to put the D in front of my name again for multiple reasons. Um, this is a good call. Mama coming in with the wise words. Do what your mother tells you, or in this case, do what my mother tells you. I think all the people that showed up for Plattner have to show up to whatever town halls happen after the decision for a candidate is made. We just have to show up and get them to answer us. Make them earn your vote. And not let me be clear. Do not stay home. You don't vote, you don't complain. That's my rules for myself. I share them with you. But don't stay home. But make them earn it. Make them earn your vote. Don't just go with whatever the Dems decide. Because maybe it'll be a good choice and maybe we'll all roll our eyes. Which brings me to um what do we do and where do we go from here? Also, hey, establishment, I'd like to remind you in the world of what is Maine and what sort of things are we liable to send to DC, we sent Margaret Chase Smith, who stood up against her own party when when the whole McCarthyism thing started. And Margaret Chase Smith was like, I don't care, I'm a Republican. No, we're not doing that. So I'd just like to remind you that we have a history of sending people who are salt of the earth, who do not give a flying fuck. In some ways, it's one of the reasons why Susan Collins keeps getting reelected. She's still that. Like she talks about having, you know, oh boo hoo, and I don't know, and I'm gravely concerned about the president. Ma'am, no, you're not. You know you're on his side and all of that. Like it is, but she shows up in Maine and we're like, yeah, we kind of understand because she's not gonna do what everybody tells her she ought to do, even when it makes sense for everybody. And so with that, like we need somebody who isn't gonna just kowtow to the Beltway Bros. We just we need somebody who's gonna go be like, yeah, and I'm from Maine, bitch. I seriously, I need to find a shirt. I'm sure one already exists that says Jericho bitch, but I need a shirt that says Jericho bitch. If we don't already have one, I will make one. Cause merch, merch, baby. We live in a capitalist hellscape. Hi. Merch link is also in the description, by the way. Cause bark a lot. Had to. I had to. I walked right into my own self promotion. Besides, we're getting to the lighter portion of the show tonight. Y'all have been amazing. We've been here for an hour and a half. Um, Mama coming in if they don't schedule town halls. Yeah, bark a lot and hound it out of them. If they don't schedule a town okay, chat, you know I'm gonna be watching this, but also, if they don't schedule town halls, this may be one of the few negative things I am willing to do on this channel. I will call their asses out, and I will not shut up. Um, why? Because I wanna get to cover fun things after this. I'm tired of the heavy crap, like this heavy crap. Politics, pop culture, and court. Do you know how many things we can cover? Do you have any idea? My docket list of things I wanna go over is massive. Aurora, you're getting off the point. I am getting off of the point. I need to squirrel swoop. Squirrel! Squirrel! All right, Mainers. And non-Mainers. If you are watching from afar and you have Maine and Maine friends, or you're just not thinking that the national media is giving you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, first of all, you are absolutely fucking right. And second of all, welcome to the Aurora tries to find a silver lining portion of the show. I am a pathological optimist. We are in the middle of a dumpster. What was that quote? Even though it's Jake Tapper, but we are in a train wreck inside of a dumpster fire. Nope, I've lost it. Anyway, we're a train wreck inside of a dumpster fire floating down a river of shit. That is what is happening here. And we're trying to navigate things that, first of all, the state has never had to navigate before. And second of all, they are a lot of things that are really hard to all hold space for. And somehow, what is shocking and so uplifting to me is Mainers are doing it. So, hey, big creators, hi, hi. If Mainers are able to hold all of these really difficult things and um, opposing opinions and hold the murky and hold the muddy and hold the messy of it all and sit down and try and parse through that with a level head, maybe instead of insulting us, you could just learn from how we're doing this, because we are in a spot where we need community and we need each other. And in community building, if your first instinct is to shit on somebody else, that's not community building. That's being a bully. So maybe if you have a state that is trying to figure this out and is somehow talking to each other and trying to navigate it, then maybe, just maybe, you'll figure out why the saying is, as Maine goes, so goes the nation. Just a thought. Anyway, where where do we go from here? Well, I'm a pathological optimist, and you know that. So rather than waiting for the main Democratic Party or the national news or any of that to just tell us what we're supposed to do, um, let's get out there. Let's go find all of the communities. All that community building that the Plattner campaign did, do not let that go to waste. Call your friends from those campaigns. Call your friends from his campaign. Call your friends from the community projects that you worked on there and start figuring out who we want or what we need to do from here, because I don't trust the Dems to pick somebody who can defeat Collins. And I do not know off the top of my head what all of the rules are for certain dates for certain people, right? In going through this. But um whether it's Troy, whether it's Page Loud, whether again, I, I I'm gonna do a wheel with everybody where we just spin it, I guess, because that's kind of where we're at the moment. But we need to get out with our friends and our neighbors because when you get in touch with your friends and your neighbors, you know what? We're going to be reminded of why we were working so hard up until they took the wind out of our sails. Okay? We take a breather, we touch grass, we call friends, we reevaluate. And part of this, and I cannot stress this enough, we see the problems now. What all of this has done, this is a weird silver lining, I know, but what all of this has done is this has exposed all of those weird little establishment things that were supposed to remain hidden. The kingmakers, the knocks on doors, the random phone calls, the oppo research not being so that you can protect your candidate per se, but so that you know what's so that you can protect your candidate in certain areas and use what you find to end them in others. That's the vetting of this all. So that has all been exposed in a way that hasn't, in my memory, been done before. So let's not forget that. Don't let them forget that. Don't let the nation forget that this is what we have learned from this process. Okay? This is a catalyst. This is one little event. Also, let's lead with curiosity because who the hell knows what the next bit of round of facts is going to unearth, right? It might be worse for Plattner. It might be better. We don't actually know because the people gunning for him have taken him out. So they're moving on to the next round, which seems to be Massachusetts, which is weird, but that's a whole different show. Um, so we've now seen that, and we've seen how the intense desire to remain at the status quo has led us to fascism. Um, so here's the thing. If ever there was a state where we can take what has been torn down and continue to do so and rebuild while we're doing that, it's Maine. And when I say rebuild it, I mean rebuild it in the spirit of our founders. Not not the actual men, because let's face it, they were kind of, well, garbage. Um, I know it's a whole dichotomy. We love some of our founders, we dislike some of our founders. Eh, a little too many of them owned other humans as property and really fought hard to keep that going. So it can't quite get to everybody was a great person. I do think Jefferson should have read, well, a lot more of what he wrote, but I feel that way about a lot of folks. I'm also listening to America 250 right now, so I'm getting a whole history lesson and speeches from Frederick Douglass. So this is, I think, if Maine is going to rebuild anything, rebuild what has ultimately been broken, it's us, and we can do it in a way that has a better foundation and better structure than we've had before. Because I think so much of this is what this has exposed is DC needs us to not be paying attention. And Trump required that we pay attention to fucking everything. And now we start to see the pendulum shift. I believe I would defer to Heather Cox Richardson on this, but I believe that the most popular period of time in United States history was the progressive era. You know, why do we have a president who can only serve 2 terms? Because this progressive Roosevelt was so fucking popular, he just kept getting elected, and that wasn't part of the game. So they had to change that because they knew they were never going to win if he was still around. And we are heading toward that area. So that is where we go from here. I think there is a very real possibility that Maine has a split. If ever there is going to be a time where the Democratic Party is faltering and could be replaced by a third party, now is now is the time. And I think this was the catalyst. So I will be watching the Maine Democratic race. I cannot be a delegate. Although if you are a delegate, please reach out. I want chat. I want chat. I have questions. I want to chat. Um, my cat is trying to stretch, and so in a minute here, like I'm trying very hard not to lose sound. So just FYI. So that is where we are at. I and the lamp. The lamp goes. The lamp goes down. Okay. This is my cue to start wrapping up. You guys are amazing. Mainers. Mainers, Mainers, Mainers. Stay salty, Maine. I know today was the Moxie Festival. Um, I mean, hey nation, we're a group of people that made two beverages. Well, I guess we didn't make Allen's coffee brandy, but we embraced it. We embraced the ever loving fuck out of it. And Moxie, both of which taste a little bit like cough syrup when slightly sour, but in a good way. And I can't explain that. You either have to try it or yeah, but they both have a cough syrup kind of a vibe, but also not. I don't know. We created 2 beverages that nobody can describe. They just know that for most people, it's terrible, but also a lot of us love it, and nobody really can put a finger at the nobody can articulate why. That is our state. That is us. This is where we are at. We are going to be watching this closely, but you know what, chat? Chat, 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 chat. I would love for one fucking week if politics, the president, the rest of them could just take a nap so that I can cover some things like the Cats on the Couch lawsuit, like catch us up on Karen Reed and stuff like that. And Murdaugh, catch us up on Murdaugh. What's the other one that I'm missing? Oh, right. I wanted to discuss the whole PR versus privacy thing with the Taylor and Travis wedding and where I stand on that. Um, so anyway, hi, if you're new here, welcome. Also, if we need a break from this next week, totally get it. It's going to still be here. I'm tired, you're tired. You let me know what you what of any of the things that I just mentioned or anything else, please let me know what we should spend next Saturday doing. Um, hopefully it's not covering more of this. And anyway, as Maine goes, so goes the nation. We're gonna figure this shit out, and then I think no matter what ends up happening, DC is going to have to deal with Maine, and the Beltway Bros are going to have to deal with everything that we have just learned. And I don't know if you've picked up on this. You should have. Mainers don't let things go real easy. Like, we will let a fuck ton go. But when you have poked us to the point where we hold a grudge, guys, we rooted for the Sox for 80 years of them losing. Okay, this is the people that you are dealing with. We rooted for the Red Sox for like almost a century, even though they routinely lost. And yeah. So there is that. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Um, right. Go check out Phil DeFranco. He's the only news person that doesn't make me want to scream or yeet into the sun these days. He might lose that title, but for now, he gets to keep the title of the only one that isn't muted on so many things. Go follow Black Girl in Maine, aka Shay. She is amazing, and also I just kind of love seeing a black woman from Maine get her flowers. Also, okay, before I let you go, I do have to I do have to fill you in, especially if you're from away. If you're from Maine, you get it. Okay. I'm a biscuit. If you're from Maine, you get it. I was not born here. I moved here at the ripe old age of 7. Not my fault. Not my fault. Therefore, I'm a biscuit because I was not born in this state. But I was raised here. And I've now spent more of my life here than I have anywhere else. There's always this joke that if you can't take your family back 2, 3, 4 generations here in Maine, you're not really a Mainer. But I will have you know, Shay did not move here until she was an adult. And every Mainer I know has fully embraced her as a Mainer, which is also kind of funny because she is so reluctant to take that title based on the things that I have seen in her writings. She's a Chicagoan through and through, it would seem, and she doesn't want the mantle of Mainer, and yet we have bestowed it upon her. So I'm just saying, when you have the vibe and the spirit of Maine as part of who you are and part of how you live your life, we will claim you as one of ours, whether or not you ask to be a Mainer. So we will shun you from now until forever, or we will embrace you whether you want the adoption or not. It's it's just kind of how we roll here. But anyway, go follow Shay. She's awesome. Her writing is about as objective as I've seen writing get, even when you are writing about something you can't be fully objective about. And I appreciate her diligence. And I love that everybody in this campaign has already reached out to her because they know she makes a difference. Also, be kind to her. Don't go trolling on her page. We don't do that. We don't do that here. All right. And oh yeah, mute the motherfuckers who don't open their listening ears because you don't need that kind of shit in your life. Okay? We got community here. We will have a conversation with anybody outside of the state, but I am gonna start. If you're from Florida, I'm gonna ask you all kinds of questions about Vin, and then we can go from there. Okay? So, um, my friends from Maine and from away, you have been amazing. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the community. Do all the YouTubey things. Support your local stuff. I will see you next week. You guys are amazing. I said that already. I know. I'm tired. Whatever. Anyway, be well. Do good. Gird your loins, Maine, because the shit show has only just begun. And remember to bark a lot. I will see you on the next one. Night. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bark a Lot, Follow me on Threads and Insta at the Aurora H. White. That's where I post most frequently between shows. Hit that like button, connect with us, and remember to bark a lot. We will see you next time.